Close your eyes and journey back to a sweltering July afternoon in 1955. You are standing on a sun-baked sidewalk, the heat radiating off the concrete in shimmering waves. You push open the heavy glass door of a local drugstore or a roadside A&W stand, and the world suddenly turns cool. You hear the rhythmic whir of a ceiling fan and the low hum of a refrigeration unit. But it's the smell that hits you first. It isn't the sterile, sugary scent of a modern soda fountain. It is deep, earthy, and complex. It smells of the forest floor, of spice, and of something ancient. You watch as a heavy, thick glass mug pulled straight from a deep freezer and covered in a layer of white frost is placed on a counter. The clerk pulls a brass lever, and a dark, foaming liquid cascades into the mug, building a head of cream so thick you could almost stand a spoon in it. This was the golden age of root beer. Back then, root beer wasn't just a flavor profile created in a laboratory in New Jersey. It was a botanical reality. It was a root beer in the most literal sense. It was brewed from the gnarled, aromatic bark of the sassafras tree, a native titan of the American woods. For the generation that grew up in the mid-20th century, that first sip was a revelation. It was spicy, medicinal, and cooling in a way that modern soda simply cannot replicate. But as we stand today, sipping on a plastic bottle of root beer that tastes more like wintergreen candy and chemicals than a forest floor, we have to perform an autopsy on that flavor, because the disappearance of real root beer wasn't just an accident of changing tastes, it was a sensory heist. To understand why your favorite childhood drink has lost its soul, we have to dig into the 1960 FDA ban, the moment a forest medicine was turned into a corporate liability. To perform our economic archaeology correctly, we have to understand what sassafras actually was. Before it was a soda, it was a tonic. For centuries, the indigenous people of the eastern woodlands and the early European settlers viewed the sassafras tree as a gift from the earth. In the springtime, when the blood felt sluggish after a long, dark winter, you didn't go to a pharmacy. You went to the woods with a shovel. You dug for the roots of a young sassafras tree, pulled away the dark, fragrant earth, and stripped the bark. When you boiled those roots, the house would fill with a scent that was part vanilla, part cinnamon, and part wild spice. This was the spring tonic. It was believed to clean the blood and revive the spirit. It was a fixed anchor of American health for 300 years. In the 1800s, a pharmacist named Charles Hyers realized he could take this folk medicine and turn it into a commercial success. He combined sassafras with sarsaparilla, birch bark, wintergreen, and dandelion root to create the Great American Temperance Drink. Root beer was born as a bridge between the forest and the city. It was a botanical brew. In the Golden Age, every local bottler had their own secret recipe, and those recipes relied on the wild harvested oils of the American forest. It was a handshake economy of taste. You knew the flavor was real because you could find the very tree it came from in your own backyard. But as the soda industry grew into a multi-billion-dollar empire, the wildness of sassafras became a problem. You see, you cannot industrialize a forest root easily. You cannot patent a tree that grows for free in the Appalachians. To truly control the market, the industry needed a reason to move away from the forest and into the lab. And in 1960, they found their perfect excuse. The archaeological turning point occurred in December of 1960. The FDA issued a sudden sweeping ban on safrole, the essential oil found in sassafras bark. The justification was a series of laboratory studies where rats were fed massive, astronomical doses of pure safrole, amounts that no human could ever consume in a lifetime of drinking root beer. The rats developed liver tumors, and almost overnight, the forest tonic was declared a carcinogen. But as we look beneath the surface of this ban, the archaeology reveals a troubling inconsistency. Safrole isn't just in sassafras. It is in black pepper. It is in nutmeg. It is in star anise and basil. Yet the government didn't ban pepper or nutmeg. They specifically targeted the soul of the American root beer. Why? Because the Safrole ban provided a convenient regulatory wall. The massive soda conglomerates were already struggling with the cost and the variability of wild-harvested sassafras. By banning the natural root, the government effectively forced the entire industry to switch to synthetic substitutes. This was the great flavor heist. The corporations traded the real for the simulation. They replaced the complex medicinal oils of the sassafras tree with a laboratory-created version of methyl salicylate, the flavor of wintergreen. They told the public they were protecting them from a toxin, but in reality they were protecting their own supply chains. They moved the source of flavor from the American forest to the corporate laboratory. They didn't just ban a chemical, they banned the ability for a local bottler to make a real product for a real community. As we move into the 1970s and 80s, the economic archaeology reveals the second phase of the heist, the sugar squeeze. Once the botanical soul of root beer was removed and replaced with wintergreen chemicals, the drink lost its body. Real sassafras has a natural, creamy mouthfeel. When you take that away, you are left with something thin and watery. To mask this loss of quality, the industry did exactly what we saw in our investigation of the grocery store. They doubled down on the sweeteners. In the Golden Age, root beer was sweetened with cane sugar or even molasses, which added to the medicinal complexity. But in the late 70s, the industry pivoted to high-fructose corn syrup. Suddenly, root beer stopped being a brew and started being sugar water. The sensory archaeology of this shift is profound. If you grew up in the 50s, you remember a drink that was earthy and warm. If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you remember a drink that was sticky and cold. The wintergreen pivot made the drink taste sharper and more metallic. To compensate for the lack of real herbal depth, the companies added more caramel coloring and more artificial foam boosters. We were moved from quality to throughput. A bottle of modern root beer is designed to be produced for pennies and sold for dollars. The replacement cycle we discussed in the appliance industry applies here too. Because the synthetic version is so cheap to make, the companies could spend more on marketing and brand loyalty than on the actual liquid in the bottle. We were convinced to buy the logo because the liquid was no longer worth the price of the glass. Now, we must look at the financial and health insight. How does the sassafras heist affect the Golden Age generation today? For the 50-plus demographic, this loss of flavor is a symbol of the Great Shift. It represents the moment our physical reality was traded for a corporate simulation. When the government and Big Soda collaborated to ban sassafras, they didn't just change a recipe, they attacked our sovereignty of taste. They took a drink that was once a tonic, something that had roots in folk medicine, and turned it into a toxin. Modern root beer, loaded with high-fructose corn syrup and synthetic dyes, is a primary driver of the metabolic health crisis facing American retirees today. We are paying a health tax for a drink that was originally designed to make us feel better. Furthermore, we see the knowledge gap. In the 1950s, many Americans still knew how to identify a sassafras tree. They knew how to make their own tea. But by banning the commercial use of the plant, the skill of foraging was slowly erased from our culture. We were made dependent on the store-bought version. This is the hidden cost of the 1960 ban. We lost the connection to the land. We stopped seeing the forest as a pharmacy and started seeing the grocery store as the only source of life.
The economic archaeology shows that when we allowed the saffrole scare to take away our root beer, we surrendered a piece of our American identity to a corporate lab.
So, as economic archaeologists standing in front of a modern soda aisle filled with plastic bottles of synthetic wintergreen brew, what is our golden insight? How do we reclaim the original flavor and the sovereignty that was stolen in 1960? First, we must search for the botanical. In the 2026 economy, real is the new luxury. Look for craft root beers that use saffrole-free sassafras extract. Modern technology has found a way to remove the rat-toxic oil while keeping the human-loved flavor. These small-batch brewers are the last stewards of the golden age taste. They cost more, but perform the archaeology. One bottle of real root beer provides more sensory satisfaction than a six-pack of the synthetic sugar water. Second, relearn the forest. In the 2026 economy, real is the new luxury. Look for craft root beers that use saffrole-free sassafras extract. Modern technology has found a way to remove the rat-toxic oil while keeping the human-loved flavor. These small-batch brewers are the last stewards of the golden age taste. They cost more, but perform the archaeology. One bottle of real root beer provides more sensory satisfaction than a six-pack of the synthetic sugar water. Third, recognize the corporate pattern. The Sassafras heist is the same pattern we've seen in housing, in tools, and in food. Whenever a natural or local asset is replaced by a synthetic or centralized one, the goal is always control and recurring revenue. By understanding the archaeology of the ban, you regain the power to choose authenticity over simulation. The root beer of 1955 is a ghost. It belongs to a world of sound medicine, sound ingredients, and sound community. We cannot undo the FDA ban of 1960, but we can refuse to be fooled by the synthetic simulation. We can remember that real taste is a connection to our history and our land. We can stop being consumers of chemicals and start being stewards of tradition. Ownership isn't just about having the receipt for the soda. It's about having the belonging to the original flavor of America. Before we go, I want to ask you, when was the last time you had a root beer that actually tasted real? Was it at a state fair, a specific roadside stand, or did your grandmother make the tea herself? Share your root beer story in the comments below. Let's keep the earthy memory of America alive. Thank you for watching the Golden Age Insight.